Hello, this is Pauline.
And I'm Howard.
And we start today with the Society News for Friday, the 26th of April 2019. Tuesday, 30th of April. There will be a coffee morning held at Costa Coffee High Street in Ryde. Laura will be there between 10:30 and 11:45am. Refreshments are available to purchase direct from the coffee shop. The swimming group are swimming at the waterside pool in Ryde. The pool is closed to the public whilst the group swims. There are male and female volunteers to help you get in and out of the pool, as well as lifeguards to ensure your safety. To join the swimming group, please call the site for Wight first to notify us of your swimming ability. You need to register with the office at Millbrook House first to be able to swim with the group. And on Wednesday the 1st of May, the weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House this week from 10:30am. There will also be our low vision drop-in between 10am and 12 noon. This is a weekly event to allow you to view and try the low vision equipment we have at the Society without the need for an appointment. We will be attending the Independent Arts Sing-About session at St Mark's Church Hall, Wootton. We will be joining this session on the first Wednesday of each month. The session runs from 2pm till 4pm. It is free to attend and refreshments are provided. However, voluntary donations to independent arts are appreciated. Minibus transport may be available depending on location and it costs £2. If you would like to join the Sing About group, then please call Laura on 522205.
On Thursday the 2nd of May there'll be a coffee morning held at Costa Coffee, High Street, Cowes. Laura will be there between 10:30 and 11:45am. Refreshments are available to purchase direct from the coffee shop. The Thursday social group are meeting at Millbrook House. The group meets from 10:30am till 2pm. You can knit or just have a chat, and then later in the afternoon volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics. Other news today. What do you think about local health services? The Care Quality Commission would like to speak to people aged over 18 who have experience of medical and surgical services as inpatients or outpatients at St Mary's Hospital. They're holding a focus group on Wednesday 22nd of May from 11am to 12:30pm at the Riverside Centre in Newport. The subjects they're particularly focused on are care at weekends and at night, communication and information about treatment, levels of kindness and professionalism of staff, prescriptions and privacy and dignity on the wards. If you wish to attend, please email joanna.smith@healthwatchisleofwight.co.uk or call 522-609. This will register your interest and they will contact you if you've been allocated a space. Spaces are limited. Southern Vectors have advised us of some time-limited changes to the following bus routes. From 8am on April the 11th until 5pm on 17th of May, routes 2, 3 and 8, which normally operate from Fitzroy Street, Sandown, will operate from the Broadway right into Station Avenue. From 6:30am on April 23rd until 6:30pm on 3rd of May, routes 22 and the Island Coaster will not be serving the Esplanade at Shanklin. This is due to works on the road surface. We'll be holding a low vision day here at Millbrook House on Wednesday 22nd of May between 10am and 3pm. We will be joined by Professional Vision Services, the Macula Society and Dolphin Speech Software. We will also have a display of clocks and watches from Cobalt and technology and aids available from the Society. Refreshments and parking will be available.
This week's In Touch. 3 stories on accepting blindness. Dave Steele was diagnosed with the hereditary condition retinitis pigmentosa 5 years ago. He found translating his grief and loss into poetry was cathartic for him and quickly discovered that it helped others who were also coming to terms with visual impairment. The Colorado Center for the Blind in the United States, run by the National Federation for the Blind, offers a 9-month course to people who want to learn skills for living life as a visually impaired person. At the end of the course, they must pass a final assessment. It's called The Drop and involves being driven to an unknown location, handed a phone on which they can only make emergency calls, and told to find their way back to the centre. Danielle Montour completed The Drop back in September. She tells us how it helped her to become more comfortable with her blindness. And Chris Fisher went from being fully sighted and studying for his pilot's licence to 4 weeks later being totally blind. Chris, always good with maintenance and building things, turned back to what he knew before losing his sight and has built a commercially viable business as a wood turner. Chris shows Tom Walker around his workshop. The presenter will be Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumartat, reporter Tom Walker.
Now on to the Isle of Wight County Press for Friday 26th of April 2019, beginning with the main headlines. Elderly residents were stuck in their flats for 4 days when the lift broke. One ended up sleeping on a chair downstairs and no one from the Housing Association phoned to check on them. The lift at St Cross Court, Newport, broke at around 4 p.m. on Saturday and was finally fixed on Wednesday, leaving some residents of the 61 flats stranded over Easter. Sovereign Housing apologised for the inconvenience but said residents had access to a 24-hour phone line to contact duty housing officers. Some people were checked into a hotel when they couldn't get up the stairs. Many of the residents were together in the communal lounge when they realised the lift had broken. After waiting several hours for the engineer, only to find out that the lift couldn't be repaired, they had to help each other struggle up the stairs in the early hours of the morning, and one had to sleep across chairs in the lounge. It's understood a former manager of the flats went in to assist residents. Residents have written a letter of complaint to Sovereign, stating the lift is not fit for purpose. A second lift is out of action until the end of June. Brenda Barton, 86, was helped upstairs at 3:30 a.m. and her daughter Linda Archer said on Tuesday she's been stuck up there ever since. It's absolutely disgusting that Sovereign haven't bothered to contact the residents and ask if they're okay. Patricia Taplin, 77, said, "We were not informed the lift was broken, so we went to go out on Easter Sunday and couldn't. I've got bad knees, but was able to struggle down and up all 48 stairs to get some shopping. It's terrible for disabled people to be stuck indoors for several days. My husband felt like he was in prison, especially in that nice weather, and there were many here in the same position. It was a lot of trauma and stress." Eve Buxton, Sovereign Housing Services manager, said, "We'd like to apologise for any inconvenience caused. Although an engineer attended within 6 hours, a specialist part was needed. Due to the bank holiday, this was unavailable until Tuesday, and traffic delayed the engineer's return. We know it was frustrating for our residents, but Careline is available to call 24 hours a day to help with any issues."
The second headline, Yacht and Floaty Crash in Medina. An investigation has been launched after the Cowes floating bridge and a yacht crashed in the River Medina. The yacht was heading out of the harbour when it hit the side of the floating bridge on the East Cowes side at around 4 p.m. last Friday. Cowes Harbour Master Stuart McIntosh said the yacht was caught out by the strong tide. "It's an area of strong tides. We've put up a lot of notices and guidance to inform people of the potential risks in that area," he said. "Our preliminary investigations have found the yacht was leaving the river and saw the bridge traversing, but was not able to stop in time. Although critics have said Floating Bridge 6 is too large to adequately navigate the river, Captain McIntosh said there was no evidence to suggest the design or operation of the floating bridge was a factor in the crash. Cameron Palin, who was on the Red Funnel car ferry as it came into dock and witnessed the crash, said, "I could see the sail of the yacht sticking up from behind the floating bridge. It only looked like a small crash and the yacht was able to move away afterwards, but it does bring into question why the floating bridge has to be so big. This isn't the first time this has happened." After the crash, there were all these other boats waiting to get past. It was chaos. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson said an incident form would be completed and passed to the Cowes Harbour Commission, which has jurisdiction over the harbour.
Islanders can hold on to their pound coins for a few weeks longer. The introduction of overnight parking charges has been delayed until June. The controversial £1 overnight fee, approved by the Isle of Wight Council at its February budget meeting, was expected to come into force this month. Signs have been placed on ticket machines across the island, letting people know about the £1 cost for parking between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m, or in some areas 10 a.m. However, some residents reported issues with machines not accepting the right amount of change. The council has now said it needs new signs and machine software, and it's likely the start date for all on and off street overnight charges will be early June. A spokesperson said, The Isle of Wight Council has a statutory duty to display an official notice indicating new chargeable hours. The notices are effective from April 6th, but they do not state charges are implemented from then. People are advised to check the tariff boards, as these will be changed to indicate overnight charging has started. The new charge will be introduced at a number of council car parks and at on-street locations, including Cowes, Ryde, Sandown, Shanklin and Ventnors seafronts. For a full list of areas where the £1 overnight will apply, visit the County Press website at tinyearl.com/YYNYGTSF.
I saw rubbish warning. Overflowing seafront bins could become a regular feature this summer, it has been warned. Following £11.4 million worth of cuts to the Highways PFI contract, roadside bins will not be emptied as regularly. Sandown councillor Debbie Andre said town and parish councils could not afford to pay to clean away extra litter. She said the Bay Area is at the forefront of tourism on the island. It was voted one of the best beaches in the country. We should do everything we can to protect that. I'm incredibly concerned about the impact this is going to have, and it's an incredibly serious issue that needs more scrutiny. Island Road Service Director Steve Ashman said although the level of service would be reduced, he was confident residents would continue to receive a high-quality programme of highways improvement and maintenance. Ryde Town Councillor and Island Labour Chair Julian Critchley said, "We're a holiday island and our economy is dependent upon tourism. The image which we sell is of a neat, clean, beautiful place with handsome Victorian towns, stunning countryside and some of the best beaches in the country. Overflowing bins and overgrown roads aren't just an unpleasant eyesore, but a real risk to our economy." Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Transport, Councillor Ian Ward, said, "These changes are an evolution of the contract as we have discovered the service was better than needed in some areas."
Scrapping CCTV monitoring will make the island's streets less safe and put vulnerable people at risk, it's been warned. The Isle of Wight Council has announced the island's camera network will no longer be monitored as it looks to slash the highways PFI budget by £40 million. All 5 posts at the CCTV control room at Island Road's Newport headquarters will be axed as part of the plans. The council said it had identified £11.4 million of cuts so far, which also includes reductions in street cleaning, verge cutting and emptying roadside bins. When asked for a list of the cuts, however, the council said it was unable to provide one. Unison Branch Secretary Mark Chiverton said he'd spoken to CCTV control room staff, the majority of whom were union members. He warned the move would lead to more crime, particularly antisocial behaviour. The council disagreed and said police would still have access to the network of 100 cameras. Mr Chiverton said the impact on preventing crime and antisocial behaviour will be considerable. Town centres in particular will be less safe without people watching the cameras. It's inevitable. A huge number of incidents are flagged up by operators in the control room, well over 1,000 incidents in the last 4 months. CCTV has proved absolutely crucial in bringing prosecutions, and that's because you have operatives tracking incidents. How useful is CCTV evidence going to be now? Mr Chiverton said operators had also spotted vulnerable 7 Acres patients in the St Mary's Hospital grounds, people who were vulnerable due to drink or drugs, and homeless people sleeping on benches in cold weather who needed help. A council spokesperson said the authority didn't agree with Unison's assessment, highlighting the island's low recorded crime rate and the fact police would still have access to the live feed and the ability to control the cameras. Other mainland authorities have not monitored CCTV 24 hours a day for several years and were following that practice, said the spokesperson, adding that parish councils might consider paying for provision on Friday and Saturday nights, for example. The council has been tasked to save £5.5 million this year. If these reductions do not happen, the money would need to be found elsewhere. The council sees this package of measures to be the least disruptive of options, with no cut to frontline Island Roads functions such as road resurfacing, maintenance and road safety.
And the architect of the Highways PFI, who has been paid almost £130,000 for 8 months' work fixing the contract he put together, will remain on the Isle of Wight Council payroll for another year. former Highways PFI Council officer turned consultant J. Sundara of Jasmine Consulting has advised the council on cuts to the contract. In July last year, the council said Mr. J.S. Sundara would be paid £70,000 to explore cost-cutting measures within the contract. In fact, he received £95,000 between July and December, including £750 a month for accommodation costs. In January, payments to Jasmine Consulting totalled £12,406. In February, the total was £22,262. A council spokesperson confirmed Mr. J.S. Sundara's contract would run for a further 12 months. This period is support to the delivery of the savings programme, which may be completed before that timescale, said the spokesperson. The council, supported by Jasmine Consulting, is continuing to negotiate with Island Road's further savings to be implemented from April 2020. Independent Labour councillor Jeff Brodie said why the council needed J.S. Sundara to harvest the low-hanging fruit he has picked for saving is beyond me. I could have done that in 5 minutes if so minded.
Deer have been spotted in Shorewell, leading to more speculation that they're running wild on the island. There are known captive deer on the island, with the nearest deer farm to Shorewell at Chale, but there have long been rumours they're also found in the wild. There have also been incidents when deer have been suspected of swimming across the Solent. It's been hotly contested that the island has wild deer, but skateboarder John Cattle snapped pictures and a video he believes confirms the presence of the animal in the wild. He said, "I saw them on the road up to the big mast at Shorewell, just chilling in a field. They looked wild to me."
Beachgoers have been urged to take care following a huge cliff fall over the bank holiday weekend. Around 300 to 400 tonnes of rock fell from Redcliffe at Yaverland Beach near Sandown on Good Friday. The Bembridge Coast Guard rescue team, which was called to the scene to investigate, has advised people to take care. They collected photos and videos which were sent back to the control room to help with accident prevention.
Part of the Cowes to Newport cycle track will close for several weeks while underground electricity cables are renewed. Island Roads has been working with Scottish and Southern Electricity, SSE, to minimise disruption during the work and has pledged to open the route during the May bank holidays and school half-term. If work is not taking place and it's safe, the cycle track will be open during weekends. The work will see 3 cables laid a metre beneath the track to improve supplies to the Cowes area hit by recent outages due to the ageing infrastructure. It started on Tuesday and will continue till June 13th, during which time there will be periodic closures between Arctic Road, Cowes and Medham. Simon Biles of SSE said, "There's a real need to upgrade these cables to improve power supplies now and for the future. We've sought to avoid the busiest summer period." But resident Tanja Rebel said it's unacceptable to close off a cycle path during such a long time for weekday commuters, and especially during this time of year when so many choose to cycle. It's irresponsible to force them onto a road with heavy traffic.
For those who use Sandown Post Office, it has reopened at a new location. The post office is now open 7 days a week at Best Way Retail in Avenue Road. Previous premises in Albert Road closed at the end of March due to the lease expiring. And a little note here, the county press is increasing in price. The price of the county press is to increase to 95p from next week. The paper has been priced at 90p since 2016. Increased production costs has made it necessary to increase the price.
Vulnerable residents recovering from alcohol addiction will be left overnight without staff support at their Shanklin hostel. Two Saints, which manages Butler Gardens, is withdrawing on-site staff from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. and installing an on-call service for residents instead. The accommodation has 10 rooms, including 2 for detox and 2 for people suffering mental health problems. Resident Jade Mitchell, 26, said a naked man entered her room one night, but with staff on hand the problem was swiftly sorted. She is worried about what will happen when the night staff are withdrawn. She explained, "Our safety and our recovery is at risk. I've done really well, been here nearly a year getting the help I need. It's the staff that have helped me, and losing them overnight is a massive problem. With this stress, I've been feeling like relapsing. They might not think we're important enough to listen to. They're treating us like we're stupid, saying it's not about money. We're just getting fobbed off. We tried to hand in a letter of complaint and they said we were following the wrong complaints procedure, but we just want to be heard. Fellow resident Teresa McConville, 54, is a recovering alcoholic suffering pancreatitis. She said, "Everybody's worried about what's going to happen. People in our situation, when desperate, they do stupid things, and without staff here, we will feel vulnerable. People can be like Jekyll and Hyde, nice by day, then change when they get desperate, and then they'll do anything. I don't want to be here anymore, and we all feel the same. It's worrying." James McDermott, Regional Director of Two Saints, said, "The health, well-being and safety of all residents of Butler Gardens is of paramount importance." Two Saints, Inclusion and the Isle of Wight Council recently conducted a careful and thorough joint review of night cover arrangements at Butler Gardens. Following this, changes have been agreed and introduced. The service is staffed from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, and outside these hours clients have access to an on-call service. There's also the flexibility to increase night support provision to clients as and when required. These changes mean our staff have more hours during the day to provide the vital support our clients need. The residents' letter of complaint outlines their concerns, including the increased risk of drugs or alcohol being brought into the premises. They wrote, "As vulnerable adults trying to overcome our individual personal problems and who pay rent to stay in supported accommodation, we should not be expected to be responsible for monitoring the building or each other."
A rare visitor to the island has been spotted by bird watchers. A hoopie, a rare migratory bird, was seen in Brading on Wednesday last week. The RSPB said around 100 individual hoopies visit Britain each spring as birds migrating north to Europe from Africa overshoot and land on the south coast of England. Birdwatcher Alan Brown managed to snatch a video of the hoopie and said, "They are a scarce visitor to Britain. I go birding for hours every day, and it's only my third in more than 50 years on the island." Hoopies are more likely to be seen on golf courses looking for their favourite food, leather jacket beetles.
Vandals have set fire to a public toilet in Shanklin. The disabled and baby-changing cubicle at the Falcon Cross toilet block, which has won national awards, has been closed following the incident on Wednesday, April 10th. Town Councillor John Gilby, who has provided the police with CCTV footage, said, "Fortunately, there were no injuries, but it doesn't bear thinking about what could have happened as a result of this mindless act of vandalism. The toilet block is so near to shops and residential properties. Had we not changed them to single occupancy, self-contained units, then the building would have definitely been extensively damaged. The fire caused damage to 2 areas of the self-contained unit and smoke contamination to all surfaces. It's going to take some time to repair and bring back into use. We hope those responsible are held to account. When things like this happen, it has major implications, not just financial, but for all our residents and visitors. We will not and should not tolerate this type of behaviour to publicly owned property. Anyone with information about the incident can call police on 101, quoting the reference number 441 901 25247.
He could have kicked back and retired, but Chris Orchard instead opted for a new challenge, undertaking voluntary work in Africa. Chris recently returned home to the Isle of Wight following a second visit to Nankuki, a town that lies in the shadow of Mount Kenya, where he has been teaching children at a school run by the Queen Star Community Organisation. There are 37 children at the school, aged up to 9 years old, many of whom will not go on to another school due to the cost. Prior to leaving for Kenya, Chris and friends had raised more than £500 for the school, but had yet to decide how the money should be spent. After speaking with the Queen Star project manager, it was decided to build a chicken enclosure and buy some chicks. For many pupils, the school dinner was to be their only meal during the day, and the eggs were an important element of their diet. Chris's trip was organised by Projects Abroad UK. He remains in contact with Queen Star and continues to support the organisation. His wife Sue and her friends are making clothes for the children. Chris said, "Why volunteer and not just retire? There's no such thing as retirement. There's a career change at a certain age, and that is on your own terms. Doing voluntary work abroad is a stimulating experience. In the downtime together, you feel like a mini United Nations without the politics. You're all in there with a common purpose."
A rare short-snouted seahorse was found during a beach clean at Yavaland. Blue Seas Protection hosts this beach clean on the first Sunday of every month at 11 a.m. At the last one of the group's youngest members, 8-year-old Miles, found the seahorse washed up entangled in seaweed. It's an endangered species. Blue Seas Protection is keen to see the protection level for the whole bay raised from an MPA, Marine Protected Area, to an MCZ, Marine Conservation Zone. It's already identified the bay as a natural nursery area for the undulate ray, listed as endangered by UNESCO. The group also conducted a microplastic particle survey from the pier to Yavaland in conjunction with Portsmouth University.
New technology could allow Island Police to detect when people are using their phones while driving. Hampshire Constabulary will be the first unit in the country to use the new technology to crack down on the number of drivers using their mobile phones. Working with technology company West Cotec, police can detect if people are using their phones on a particular stretch of road. When someone is found to be using their phone, the device will flash a mobile phone symbol at the car, advising them to stop. The technology can detect when Bluetooth is being used, but cannot detect if a passenger is using the phone. Motorists found using their phone will be stopped and could be given 6 points and a £200 fine. If taken to court, drivers could receive a fine of £1,000 and a driving ban. PC Liz Johnson, a road safety officer for the Joint Operations Road Policing Unit, said, "Research shows us that you are 4 times more likely to crash if you're using a mobile phone whilst driving. Reaction times are around 50% slower than a driver not using a mobile phone. It is also apparent that you are twice as likely to be involved in a fatal collision when texting compared with drink driving."
A fox cub discovered hiding inside a broken pipe in a deep ditch is now being cared for by the RSPCA. After falling down the 6-foot deep concrete ditch in Shanklin, the cub, thought to be just 5 weeks old, had climbed inside the broken pipe to hide. Luckily, he was spotted by someone who lived nearby. They waited to see if his mother would collect him, but when there was no sign of her, they called the RSPCA. Animal Collection Officer Shirley Bradley was on hand to help. She put the cub in a carrier and transported him safely to the local branch. She said, "Sadly, the cub's mum was nowhere to be seen, and I was concerned he might be injured from falling down the ditch, so it was important we took him into our care to check him over. Luckily, he wasn't injured, but because we're not aware if his mum is around or if he's orphaned, the safest thing was for him to go to a specialist wildlife centre to be looked after until he's old enough to be released back into the wild. He was certainly lucky to be spotted, especially as he was hiding in the pipe. We're really grateful to the people who found him and called us. They almost certainly saved his life." Anyone who finds a fox cub on its own, with its eyes open, should first assume it's probably fine, as parents usually stay nearby so the cubs can develop their hunting and survival skills. The RSPCA advises people who are concerned for a cub to leave a supply of dog food and water nearby and check back in 24 hours. But if the cub is in immediate danger, such as on a road, they could move it to a safe, sheltered spot nearby, handling the animal as little as possible. However, anyone who finds a fox cub with its eyes still closed, or who knows it's an orphan, or finds an injured wild animal, should contact a local wildlife organisation or the RSPCA on 0300 1234 999.
Could you foster brothers and sisters to stop them from being split up? To mark National Siblings Day earlier this month, a Ryde couple have asked people to consider becoming foster carers, particularly for sibling groups. It is thought almost 2,000 children in care across England have been split up from their brothers and sisters, and currently there is a nationwide shortage of foster carers. Emma Barneycoat and Kevin Ford shared their experience as third-generation foster carers. For Emma, fostering has always been a family affair. Her grandfather and mother fostered children and young people. A mum of 3 and a former primary school teacher, Emma said, "For more than a decade I provided educational and emotional support to children in my classroom and students with special needs. When I was pregnant with our youngest son, Sebastian, I was undecided on whether or not I wanted to go back to teaching or move into a different career. It was my mother who motivated us to pursue fostering, as I would still get to be at home with my children and provide love and care for other young people in need." Emma and Kevin foster with 5 Rivers Childcare, an independent fostering agency and social enterprise. They're currently foster parents to brothers aged 12 and 14 who joined the family 2 years ago alongside biological children Sebastian 3, Chloe 8 and Katie 12. Emma said, "The boys are part of our family and are brothers to our other children. Our extended family view them as nephews and grandsons. When the opportunity came up to provide long-term care for the brothers, it was a no-brainer for us to keep the two boys together and to bring them into our home with open arms." With Emma's mother also a foster carer, the 5 siblings have been surrounded by other foster or adopted children close in age. Martin Leach, head of fostering services at 5 Rivers Childcare, said, "Emma and Kevin have been wonderful examples of carers going above and beyond for a pair of siblings. We only hope more loving families on the Isle of Wight will be inspired to foster."
Free 12-month parking permits are on offer for owners of new zero-emission electric vehicles. The All-Ireland Electrical Vehicle Permit is available to owners of vehicles registered to an island address between April 1st, 2019 and March 31st, 2020. Cabinet Member for Environment and Heritage, Councillor John Hobart, said, "Pure electric cars and vans don't pump out harmful emissions into the air we breathe. As well as reducing emissions and improving air quality, owners also enjoy minuscule running costs, with the cost of recharging significantly less than the price of a tank of petrol or diesel. Our new All-Ireland Electric Vehicle Permit supports our sustainable transport objectives by providing a local incentive to stimulate the purchase of electric vehicles by islanders." The promotion of electric vehicles was listed as a priority in the Council's Environmental Action Plan, following suggestions from the wider community given at the authority's Environmental Conference. There are now 5 electrical vehicle charging points in council car parks at Ryde, Cowes, Sandown, Newport and Freshwater. The Newport one can charge a vehicle in 30 minutes, costing on average £6 per charge. The points elsewhere on the island typically take between 2 and 3 hours to deliver a full charge. Applications for the permit can be submitted online.
Plans to close 3 mental health day centres have been met with outrage from staff who say people will be at risk of taking their own lives. One of the 8 members of staff could also be made redundant. Under Isle of Wight Council budget proposals, Parklands in Cowes, Ribbelow in Ryde and West Wight day services, plus a satellite centre in Ventnor, could be closed to save £145,000. Staff and service users said they were devastated by the decision and had not been consulted. The council said the proposals were published in October and formed part of a wider budget consultation. One centre user said, "What will happen to people like me who need the support of the wellbeing group? There is nowhere else for us to get specialised support. I'm scared the centres are closing and I will no longer have their support. I will become isolated. I won't be able to maintain the friendships I have made." Another said, "Many a time I've felt mentally broken, and Ribbelow is a safe haven where we can share our problems with like-minded people. The centre is a lifeline for us all." One staff member warned, I have had someone tell me they would have nothing to live for. I worry people could take their own lives." When they look at it on paper, 8 members of staff with only 100 people, it seems cost-effective to cut it, but it's not. We only ever have 2 members of staff working at any one time. The council said only 112 people use the centres, with the centre having as few as 3 clients a day. A spokesperson said it is likely the centres will close in their current form, but funds have been kept back to ensure for those people who continue to need mental health day services, they can be provided in a more personalised way, for example by using personal assistants. However, one staff member said the centres had hundreds of people on their books. He said people can have no contact with the service for months, but they're still on the books. Someone might get in touch and need an hour of help or a few days. It varies because it's such an immediate service. People can just drop in. The numbers don't always reflect that.
A pet shop owner was caught selling tropical fish in an undercover sting. Graham Leslie Ruthven was ordered to pay £2,500 in fines and costs after he sold 2 zebra danio fish to Isle of Wight Council licensing officers who carried out a test purchase at Tropical World in Union Street, Ryde. Mr. Ruthven admitted selling animals without a licence under the Animal Welfare Act 2006 when he appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court last week. He was fined £1,500 and ordered to pay £1,000 costs and a victim surcharge. Mr. Ruthven was refused a pet shop licence in February last year after a vet who visited as part of the application process raised concerns about the levels of care at the store. Time was given for remedial work to take place. However, following a further inspection, standards had not improved sufficiently for a licence to be granted. Mr. Ruthven appealed the decision, but withdrew his appeal when it was agreed a vet with no prior dealings with the premises would carry out an independent assessment. During this period, the council received reports Mr. Ruthven was still selling animals, and a warning letter was sent advising him of the penalties for doing so without a licence. A vet from the mainland carried out an inspection in July, and again it was found standards fell below those required for a licence to be issued. Further reports were received that Mr. Ruthven was continuing to sell animals, and in October a test purchase was carried out by licensing officers. During the test purchase, an officer was sold 2 tropical fish. Speaking out after the case, Councillor Tig Outlaw, Council Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Public Protection, said, "The licensing section will always work with all applicants and licence holders to ensure they achieve the required standards. In most cases, this ensures compliance is achieved. In this case, however, all avenues had been exhausted. Officers were left with no alternative but to take enforcement action to preserve the welfare of the animals."
Swastikas have been daubed on a seafront cafe owned by an Isle of Wight councillor. Vandals targeted the Big Kahuna ride last Thursday. They daubed the wall with graffiti, drawing swastikas, playing noughts and crosses and writing "Men in Sheds" with a black marker pen. Ride councillor Wayne Whittle, who owns the Big Kahuna, shared pictures of the graffiti on social media. He alleged a large group of youths who had been loitering nearby, drinking and bothering his customers, had caused the damage. "They think they're gangsters, a rough old bunch who seem to be proud to be aggro," said Councillor Whittle. Police attended and spoke to a group of 13 youngsters aged between 13 and 16. No arrests have been made.
A dinosaur-themed adventure golf course has roared into town. The attraction, complete with gigantic dinosaurs, opened at Sandham Gardens in time for Easter. Dino Islands, a golf adventure, has been billed as one of the biggest and most immersive golf attractions of its kind in the UK, with life-size dinosaurs looming around the 18-hole course. The 2,000 square metre multi-level course has a huge smoking volcano and 3-metre high waterfall with boulders, ponds, bridges and vegetation. It certainly proved popular over the bank holiday and was busy all weekend. The golf course is the latest large-scale development for Sandham Gardens following the addition of Sandham Carts last summer. Christian Zanti, operations manager, said he was thrilled to open the attraction in time for the Easter weekend and the springtime influx of holidaymakers to the island. This new course really complements our existing go-karting attraction and provides a fully immersive experience for families visiting Sandown. Marina Zanti of Heritage Attractions Limited, which has a 50-year lease with Sandown Town Council to develop Sandham Gardens, said, "Designed and constructed by Rock Art UK, international specialists and market leaders in adventure golf design and construction, this development is the attraction the Isle of Wight deserves. We see it as vital for the regeneration of Sandown. We believe it will give a serious boost to the number of visitors coming to the area." Heritage Attractions Limited also owns the Needles landmark attraction. It has further plans for Sandham Gardens from 2020 onwards.
Senior Isle of Wight Conservatives will decide whether to re-adopt MP Bob Seeley as their parliamentary candidate at a meeting today, Friday. The vote will be taken by the 28 members of the Isle of Wight Conservative Association's Executive Council. Chair David Pugh said, "Bob has asked to be re-adopted because it's possible there may be a general election soon. If a general election were called, we would have to have a meeting to re-adopt him anyway, so this is purely about being prepared." When asked if he thought Mr Seeley would win the backing of the Executive Council, Mr Pugh said, "I think it's likely he will, yes. If the Council votes against re-adopting Mr Seeley, a ballot of all association members will be held."
A power cut hit the Isle of Wight after a high-voltage electricity pole at Lower Hyde Holiday Park, Shanklin, caught fire. 57 postcodes in the P037 and P038 areas, which include Shanklin, Ventnor and Godsill, lost electricity shortly after 9:20 p.m. last Saturday. Firefighters put out the fire and power was restored by the early hours.
Passionate about wildlife conservation? This could be the job for you. The Forestry Commission is looking for a project officer to help reintroduce white-tailed eagles to the Isle of Wight. The 5-year project will be carried out in partnership with the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation after a licence to reintroduce the birds was granted by Natural England. According to the job advert, the post includes feeding and monitoring the birds and giving guided walks. Sharing the advert on Twitter, wildlife presenter and conservationist Chris Packham said, "What about this for a top job in proper conservation? So exciting."
Fancy catching a glimpse of Donald Trump? The US President will be stopping by South Sea to take part in the D-Day commemorations during his state visit to the UK in June. That's just a quick trip across the Solent. He and his wife Melania will be guests of the Queen during the 3-day visit from June 3rd. The D-Day event will be staged at South Sea Common, featuring a flypast of 26 RAF aircraft and at least 11 Royal Navy vessels in the Solent. However, Portsmouth City Council leader Gerald Vernon Jackson said Trump was not welcome and his visit would ruin the D-Day event.
A project has been launched to provide help and advice to island apprentices. Funded by Union Learn through POA Learning, the Apprenticeship Support Network will support apprentices who feel they would benefit from extra support and guidance around their learning and working practices. Support could include pastoral care and advice for matters in and out of the workplace. More than 50 people attended the launch at the Riverside Centre, Newport, representing unions, employers, training providers and community groups. Guest speakers included local education and parliamentary candidate Viggs Lothian, Island Road's Steve Ambrose and Union Learn's Adrian Ryan. They shared their views on how apprentices, employers and training providers could be supported on the island.
A 4x4 stuck in the sand at Binstead for about 24 hours was freed over the Easter weekend. Bembridge Coast Guard rescue team capped off a busy bank holiday weekend by attending Players Beach to help with the rescue on Sunday evening. However, on arrival, the vehicle had already been safely recovered. No one had been hurt during the incident. It's believed the vehicle got stuck while helping launch a boat.
And just to finish on a note from the county press, in last week's county press it was incorrectly reported Yvonne Copeland, who died in the Forest Road bus crash, was the driver of one of the cars involved. We'd like to clarify that she was not driving and apologise for any distress caused.
So that concludes the first part of your Talking newspaper for today. Goodbye, best wishes from Howard.
And from Pauline.
Hello, here we are again with Weekender. And I'm Sarah.
And I'm Lester, and we start this morning with the readers' letters. And the first one is from Trevor Philcox in Bryston. Cut trees. I was so saddened to hear of this latest tragic but possibly preventable accident in the county press of the 19th of April. For years I have considered the route from Culbourne to Cowes, utilising Betty Horn Lane, a risky undertaking, particularly when heading from Cowes, owing to the inadequate visibility having reached Forest Road. Whoever is responsible for ensuring that the trees and bushes which partially obscure the driver's vision should be cut back or removed should act without delay so that there is no repetition of this calamity.
The headline is International Space Race is Just a Waste. This is from Mark Burrows of Ventnor. Am I the only person on this polluted planet who thinks the billions spent on space exploration is a waste of money? As I watched with horror another piece of space rocket crash-landed on the moon this week, adding to the increasing amount of rubbish already on the surface, we seem to be in another space race with any nation that has spare cash to throw away, including India, to whom we still send aid. Now China wants to colonise the moon and Mars. Not content with churning out plastic that ends up in this planet's seas and rivers, it now has plans on the universe. Humans have achieved wonderful things in the short space of time. We have evolved on this tiny speck of sand, but just like cancer, which eventually destroys its host, we are hell-bent on our own destruction. the marvels of space technology have photographed a black hole. Big deal. Though it's reassuring to know that we will all disappear up one, taking all our junk with us.
People's Vote from Tim Briscoe in Ryde. The European elections will be the people's vote, so desired of so many Remainers. I look forward to all the Remainers campaigning 24/7 for the independent group, Green or Liberal Party, at the forthcoming Euro elections. Labour and Conservatives will want to respect Brexit, as they did at 2017 general election. This is close to the people's vote they so want. They will have to work hard to counter the massive Brexit party vote. The island will show an even bigger leave than in 2016. Get campaigning.
This is a letter from A. Graham of Newport. I'm writing in reply to Bob Seeley's column, which was in the County Press of the 12th of the 4th. According to Bob, islanders are better off due to this benevolent government. The reality for many of us is different from the rosy picture he painted. He repeated the mantra about record levels of employment. The high number of jobs are part-time, not full-time. They're insecure jobs with zero-hour contracts. According to the government, if you work as few as 2 hours a month, you're classified as employed. According to the FT, our economy is sluggish and growth is slow. Brexit is blamed for this, but austerity must be a factor. Bob says low-paid workers are better off due to the rise in the so-called living wage, which gives us 38p more an hour. Of course, any raise is welcome, but as the living wage in reality is not enough to live on, it's a misnomer. People like me are having to choose between heating and eating. Any money given to us is taken away somewhere else, so we gain nothing, and rents and bills just go up. Bob praises universal credit. He says it makes people better off. People can wait between 5 and 12 weeks to get any money, or are being made homeless as a result. People get less, not more. The rollout has been a disaster. It's caused stress, mental health and suicide. Bob, along with his party, voted to take free school meals away from children. 900,000 children will lose that. Food banks are rising. Aspire and Pop-Up Soup Kitchen and their agencies are making sure people are being fed and receive help. Cuts to services as the government takes more money off councils are hurting people, Bob. They're sending children and families into crisis. School cuts are failing our children. Mental health services are virtually non-existent and the law centre's been taken away. Our hospital's struggling. You can't keep underfunding the NHS and expect the staff and doctors to be able to continue as if this isn't having a huge impact. Sorry, Bob. Nice, positive works count for nothing. Spend more time on the island. Visit those at the food banks, those on low incomes forced onto universal credit. Look at our failing high street. If it was all so great, why doesn't it look or feel that way?
From Sam Turner in Sandown. Nightmare on Downing Street. A nation betrayed. Damn, they voted to leave the EU in the referendum. Cameron was beside himself. But who could take over and keep us in without Joe Public getting suspicious? Theresa May was nearby. What about me? She proffered. I'm a Remainer, but could give it a go. Other Remainers, close by obviously, were thinking the same. Perfect. Theresa sat for a moment pondering the dilemma that faced her. How on earth can I deceive 17.4 million voters over the next 2 years? She thought long and hard, and then excitedly jumped to her feet. Okay, I'll do it. I'll call it Brexit means Brexit. That should at least fool them for a little while. So over the next 2 years she set to wheeling, dealing and compromising, none of which was in the referendum, where the democratic result was simply out. And she thought to herself, the electorate won't have a clue what I'm doing, and 2 years from now we will simply be remaining in the EU, a few conditions here and there, but in. With cap in hand, she set her itinerary over the coming months to visit her EU superiors, Juncker, Barnier and Tusk, in their ivory towers in Brussels, repeating over and over to herself, got to keep us in, got to keep us in. Nearing the end of the 2 years, she had finally honed her Brexit, nay, Remain, plan to put it into Parliament. The Brexiteers in Parliament voted her down and won the day, while the rebels, those acting against the nation and wishes of the 17.4 million, voted with her. Frustrated at losing the vote, our Prime Minister, called an EU regional administrator in Brussels, stated her frustration at being defeated. Very well then, I'll let Parliament decide, which came as a shock to the 17.4 million. How could Parliament decide when the electorate had already decided 2 years prior? The electorate had decided out, and as far as they were concerned, it wasn't for Parliament to discuss anything, but to simply fulfil the wishes of the democratic majority vote. Such is democracy. The electorate were aghast at this treachery. Nonetheless, the treachery continued apace as our EU regional administrator travelled back and forth across the North Sea, compromising and negotiating, by now on her knees in Brussels. Mr. Juncker, sir, please, she grovelled. Give me an extension, please, please. I beg you, give me more time to keep my country in the EU. Juncker towered over her, and he and his cohorts laughed at this pleading soul on her knees before them, with Sir Juncker making it clear. While your rebels are doing a great job in voting with you against the wishes of your electorate, you have simply got to get the Brexiteers, Rees-Mogg, Johnson, Davies, etc., on your side. Go for it, Theresa. You know you can do it. Just wear them down. And he continued, but remember this, we are simply not going to let you leave. For if you do, other countries may follow, and we cannot allow this to happen, as Brussels losing control over Europe is unthinkable, especially after tricking them all in the first place with the ruse of mere common market trading bloc, which turned into our all-along planned federal superstate. Do you remember? Theresa May got off her knees, dusted herself down and hugged her superiors. Bowing to Sir Juncker, Sir Barnier and Sir Tusk, she told them not to worry. Don't worry, I won't let you down. You can control my country and my people all you want. I've made a mockery of referendums and democracy in my country, but my country and sovereignty is yours to do it with as you please. Long live you, our all-empowering superior masters in the European Union. Humbled, she returned to her EU region, formerly known as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Here is a letter from Jim Groves of Godshill. Why silence over deal? For almost 3 years now, we, the people who voted to leave the EU, have been waiting for the government to keep its promise and deliver Brexit. It's clear both leaders of our major political parties have no intention in delivering what we voted for. Labour want to tie us into a customs union, which would mean we could not make our own trade deals and would be subject to EU legislation. Theresa May has produced an agreement that's so bad for this country it's been voted down 3 times, as it not only ties us to the EU but hands control of our affairs to them. The exit date has been cancelled and cancelled again. And now Mrs May says we are in danger of no Brexit unless Parliament votes for her deal. Parliament appears to have successfully blocked us leaving with no deal, but the only deal available to vote on is Mrs May's deal, that is a sellout. If we remain in the EU, in 2020, the Lisbon Treaty of 2007 requires all countries within the EU to adopt the euro and give up their sovereignty completely to Brussels. The London Stock Exchange would move to Frankfurt, with the loss of an estimated 200,000 jobs. It gets worse, as by 2025 under this treaty we would have to deliver our armed forces, including nuclear weapons, completely into the control of Brussels. We could have been out of the EU on March the 29th with a deal. We could have left by adopting a Canada plus deal that Donald Tusk offered Mrs May without any conditions, except the payment of the $39 billion over a year ago. But Theresa May and her civil servants turned it down, as she, Mrs May, wanted closer alignment with the EU. Mrs May's withdrawal agreement is nothing of the kind. It's a plan to tie us to the EU forever. Whereas Canada will deliver exactly what we voted for. And since it's a deal, then Parliament can have no objection to it. The Prime Minister's withdrawal agreement must be scrapped. She must be replaced by a Brexiteer PM who will seek to exit under this type of deal. You judge if our leading politicians are truthful, acting for you. They have all known of this Canada plus offer and the Lisbon Treaty, but remain silent. Ask yourself why.
And a change of subject here. Help Our Reds from John Harry in East Cowes. I have the overwhelming impression from his letter, County Press 12th of April, that Steve Shaw is totally ignorant of the fact grey squirrels are not native to this country. The red squirrel is. Grey squirrels are native to North America and were released in the UK in 1876 in Henbury Park, Cheshire. I've seen it suggested red squirrels were already in decline at that point, both from loss of habitat and from disease. In addition, grey squirrels seem to be more successful in obtaining food and also breed twice a year, which gives them a big advantage over the red squirrel. Grey squirrels also carry the squirrel pox virus, which is a serious infection for red squirrels, but doesn't seem to harm the greys. Red squirrels never had any reason to compete until we introduced that competition. So I feel it is our duty to find a solution that gives them a chance. What better way than providing an environment which removes competition while at the same time establishing conditions that encourage their spread? I don't dislike grey squirrels, but at the same time, I firmly believe we should make every attempt to ensure red squirrels do not become extinct. The world is already losing far too many forms of life every day without our deliberately ignoring a simple and relatively inexpensive solution for one of our native species.
Over to Wight memories. Dragonfly marks 40 years. One of Newport's much-loved independent shops is celebrating 40 years of trading. Emily Pearce looks back at the history of Dragonfly on Upper St James's Street. One of Newport's best-known family-run shops has celebrated its Ruby anniversary. It was 40 years ago, in 1979, that Diane Jones-Evans, née Shuttler of Newport, opened Dragonfly in Upper St James Street. Then called Newport Handicraft, the shop sold crafting materials. It was renamed Dragonfly in 1986 when Diane started selling silver jewellery and gifts. In 1991, her daughter Julie Jones-Evans, now an Isle of Wight councillor, opened clothes shop Psychedelia in the back. The range expanded to include more clothes and holistic items, and eventually Dragonfly rented the premises next door to provide workspace for holistic therapists, now home to Diane's nephew, Thomas Wharton, Boy Wonder Studio Tattoo, Isle of Wight Psychic School and the Bodyworks Clinic, a massage and beauty therapy practice. Diane said, "Dragonfly has a vast appeal. I think people are attracted to the shop because it's like a wonderful emporium. This is a strength of independent businesses who can craft a truly unique offering." Famous visitors over the years have included Tom Conti, Celia Imrie, Cassandra Eason, the sailing legend John Ridgway, and a plethora of rock stars from the Isle of Wight Festival.
And now we move on to my view. The first column is by Rebecca Roncoroni. Privately run care homes do not work. An island care home has been forced to close after inspectors found serious and widespread failing, leading to significant safeguarding concern. 17 vulnerable residents have had no choice but to be moved into different facilities. This in itself can have a devastating effect on these residents. In 2018, the consumer watchdog, which reported nearly a quarter, 24%, of English care homes run by large providers are classed by CQC as requiring improvement or inadequate. On the Isle of Wight, the reality is even more shocking. In March, the local government chronicle reported the Isle of Wight comes third highest in care homes that require improvement or are inadequate in the country, at 37.8%. Only Portsmouth and Manchester are worse. When you compare this with the best, Kingston upon Thames, with 2.4%, it makes a disturbing picture. If, as the saying goes, you judge the morals of a society by how the most vulnerable are treated, then, when it comes to the care of our elderly, something is very wrong indeed. Nearly 30 years ago, I took my first job working at a residential home. I ended up reporting the home due to what I witnessed there. The home has since been forced to close down, but it took years for this to happen. Over the course of a couple of years, I worked at few places, both residential and nursing homes, on the island. They were, without exception, awful. Staff getting patients up at 6 a.m. and putting them to bed at 7 p.m. on management orders to help keep staff numbers down. Between those hours, the only time the residents moved from the uncomfortable chairs they were assigned was for meals or going to the toilet. Bathing was once a week. Inadequate and boring food. Staff untrained in manual handling. Medicine management and dementia care. Inadequate staffing. Elderly women upset because a young man was assigned to give them intimate care against their wishes. Rough handling by staff. Staff shouting at residents. Residents with dementia left unsupervised. Residents being forced to share rooms and given no choice about who they shared with. Residents not being allowed, under health and safety, to have their own possessions around them. Residents being dressed in other residents' clothes and occasionally teeth. No stimulation, no choices, no voice, no dignity, and for those without family visiting regularly, no one to speak up for them. It was like working with a forgotten generation, immeasurably sad. It appears nothing has changed. Almost 40% of the island's care homes being rated as requires improvement or inadequate. And this is disgraceful. Looking at the recent reports which cite beds covered in dried urine and faeces, people left uncomfortably in chairs for extended periods, dirty kitchens, allegations of abuse, residents hospitalised after failure to give prescribed medication, puddles of urine on the floor, only 200 millilitres of fluid given in a day, staff lacking in compassion, pressure injuries. I despair. There's a term for this kind of care, granny farming, which comes from the historical baby farmers, women who look after far too many babies for those going to work, and who were notoriously careless, if not cruel. Many babies died in their care. It seems obvious that private care does not work. In the main, motivation is squeezing as much profit as possible out of the residents. Then standards of care are never going to be the priority. With an ageing population, we need to look at how we care for our elderly as a matter of priority.
This is another article. EU elections will break impasse by Malcolm Mime. This is another of My View articles. So much is changing in the political world at the moment that anyone writing about it knows their article could well be out of date before it is even published. But I shall take the chance. In the space of just a few days, our local MP, Captain Bob Seldom Seen Seeley, went from voting for the wishy-washy non-Brexit agreement put together by Theresa May and Michel Barnier to then voting for a no-deal Brexit. When I heard last week that Bob Seeley, which incidentally I can't help saying without putting on the voice of Edmund Blackadder, would be attending a reselection meeting at the Isle of Wight Tory HQ today, I wondered if perhaps his position was in trouble. Apparently, though, his reselection is a mere formality, carried out in preparation for a general election. The government has obviously tipped the wink to all constituencies that an election is coming soon and they're preparing the troops. Meanwhile, because of the Brexit delay, we're now faced with taking part in the European elections on May the 23rd. Unless, of course, the dream team of May, Corbyn and Barnier can come up with a new deal that gets agreed by Parliament before them, but that seems incredibly unlikely. But if we do take part in the EU elections, will anybody actually bother voting? And if so, who will we islanders be voting for? At the last EU elections in 2014, only 31% of voters on the Isle of Wight bothered to cast a vote. And of those that did, 41% voted for UKIP, who went on to win the election in the UK. As we're supposed to be leaving the EU, it could well be the case that many people won't bother to vote. But the media and the political parties are stating that the election will be used as a soft second EU referendum to gauge the mood of the country. So if you have a strong view on either leaving or remaining, you really should take the opportunity to vote. Don't worry about policies or manifestos. These won't matter for this election. It'll be all about the EU and whether we stay or leave. Those wanting a no-deal Brexit need to vote for either Nigel Farage's new Brexit party or his old lot UKIP, while those wanting to remain need to vote for the Lib Dems or the Green Party. Those who support Theresa May's deal need to vote Conservative, and those who want a proper second referendum to see what the country really want need to vote for the new Change UK party. Not that a second referendum would necessarily solve anything. It would just reiterate how split the country is. The other option is to vote Labour, but no one really seems to know where they stand, including Jeremy Corbyn and his shadow cabinet. If Farage and UKIP do as well as they did last time, and there's no reason to think they won't, then Mrs May will be forced to abandon her dreadful non-deal and will resign as Conservative leader. We will then see Boris Johnson crowned as MP, and he'll either deliver a no-deal Brexit or more likely announce that we're staying in the EU because it's proven impossible to negotiate a good deal. He will then call a general election to try and win a Tory majority. I, for one, am looking forward to the EU elections. They would seem to be the only way to break this impasse, and if it results in bumbling Boris becomes PM, then all the better. Goodness only knows who Bob is going to vote for. He'll probably just close his eyes and draw his cross where the pen lands.
And this article by Alan Marriott is about the Rhythm Tree Festival, which takes place at Three Gates Farm. Rock God joins Rhythm Tree party.
Actually.
Okay, and now we move on to the What's On section, and the first is an article about the Rhythm Tree Festival, which takes place at Three Gates Farm. Rock God joins Rhythm Tree party by Alan Marriott. He is rock royalty, the frontman of one of the biggest bands of the 70s and 80s. But Robert Plant's Led Zeppelin days are behind him, and now the singer is turning his attention to a number of different projects. Saving Grace, the latest band Plant is a member of, are coming to Rhythm Tree as headliners on Saturday, July the 13th, in a major coup for the Boutique Festival. This will be their first appearance at a festival in the UK. Saving Grace is a cooperative including Plant and Susie Diane, vocals, Tony Kelsey, mandolin, baritone and guitars, Matt Worley, banjo, acoustic and baritone guitars, and Ollie Jefferson, percussion. Rhythm Tree's deserved reputation as a very friendly and relaxed musical weekend where everyone is welcome and comfortable has now spread beyond the island, and as a result we're now able to attract acts to the calibre of Saving Grace, said Diane Burgess from the Rhythm Tree team. It is to the enormous credit of everyone from the island who has given their time and effort to our weekend over the years. This year will be the 9th consecutive Rhythm Tree at Three Gates Farm, and with 5 live stages across the site this year there are more artists than ever before. In addition to the 120 musical acts on offer, including the best of the island's own talent, there'll be a full programme of spoken word, circus acts, comedy, DJs, a silent disco and a carnival procession. And this takes place on Saturday, July the 13th.
Right. Now, news about the annual walking festival, which is celebrating its 21st anniversary in May. And the article is by Laurie Little. Walkers of all ages and abilities are invited to take part in a huge range of theme walks, including 40 new walks for 2019. The festival, run by Visit Isle of Wight, will take full advantage of more than half the island being a designated area of outstanding natural beauty, boasting 60 miles of heritage coastline and 500 miles of signposted footpaths. Set to run from May the 4th to the 19th, the festival, sponsored by Warner Leisure Hotels, gives walkers the chance to get up close and personal with the island's stunning scenery. Most walks are free, although some walk leaders request a donation for their chosen charity. Further details can be found on your computer, but it will be widely advertised shortly.
Okay, and we've got another festival here. Bring folk and don't be blue. Wolverton Folk and Blues Fair is back for its 9th year in the stunning grounds of Wolverton Manor in Shorewell. The family-friendly festival takes place on Saturday, May the 11th from 11:30am to 8pm and includes special guest artists, the producers, an award-winning UK blues band. You can also see rising folk stars, the Trials of Cato, plus the best folk and blues musicians the island has to offer. In addition to the popular real ale tent and tea tent, you will also find a barbecue, loads of activities to keep the kids entertained, craft stalls, circus skills and Morris dancing. It's a lovely opportunity to enjoy top music and a great festival atmosphere. Advance tickets are £8 each. Children under 12 go free. Tickets cost £10 on the day, subject to availability.
Charity auction at Shorewell Parish Hall, Saturday the 4th of May at 2019, 7pm, entry by catalogue, £1. Whole range of jewellery, hampers, collectibles, antiques and so on. On view from Friday the 3rd of May from 6 to 8, Saturday the 4th from 10 to 12 and 6 to 7pm. Refreshments and drinks available, and all money raised will be put towards the Shorewell Parish Hall Roofing Fund.
Christian songwriter. With this year marking the 50th anniversary of Bob Dylan's iconic performance at the Isle of Wight Festival, Christian singer-songwriter Jules Riding is proud to be following in his hero's footsteps, performing on the island. Jules will be performing at several island churches between April the 30th and May the 13th, and at Café Isola in Newport on Saturday, May the 4th at 7pm. Jules was determined to work the Isle of Wight in his latest tour due to the Bob Dylan connection and the heritage of the island's music festivals. Described as New Zealand's most prolific and accomplished singer-songwriter, Jules has released 12 items, including 3 gold records, and won 2 New Zealand Music Awards. And you can get further information or buy tickets if you phone 07522 956 152.
Lunatic fringe singer and poet returns to Ventnor. Once described as holding a premier position on rock's lunatic fringe, Alan Clayson of Clayson and the Argonauts is back for a performance at Ventnor Arts Club, taking to the stage next Friday, May the 3rd. Alan returns to the island following a successful performance last year. Further details from the Ventnor Arts Club.
Wonderfest day tickets released. The island's newest festival, the Great Wonderfest, has started selling non-camping day tickets due to demand. Boy bands Busfed and the Vamps are set to headline the family-friendly festival curated by Dick and Dom, which takes place at Duxmoor Farm near Downend from August the 1st to the 4th. The lineup includes headline sets from Sigma and Example and live performances from Conor Maynard, Mr Jam and Becky Hill. There will be DJ sets from Don Letts, Marshall Jefferson, Slipman and Bez and Rowetta from Happy Mondays. Live shows include Flawless Summer Dance Camp and Robots Live Arena. And if you want to find out more about that, visit www.greatwonderfest, that's all one word in small print, .com for more line-up news and early bird offers.
Over to other articles, and an interesting one here about gardening with Richard Wright and bluebells. The headline is, "I'm planting my very own bluebell wood." Bluebell woods are a fragrant place of beautiful calm at this time of the year. The violet blue flowers set against the vibrant greens of fresh foliage. But sadly, they face a number of threats these days from their Spanish cousin imported for centuries, which have cross-pollinated with our natives. And although they're protected, our bluebells are still dug up and sold. But perhaps the biggest peril they face in many areas is lack of woodland management, where coppicing can be sporadic or even non-existent. At Nettleston, I have watched the degeneration of what was once a glorious little copse. The canopy, saplings and ground ivy are taking the light, and the bluebells are now a threadbare carpet shadow of the past. Bluebells rely on light filtering through, and if the canopy is too dense, they don't flourish and will be out-competed by other species. Bluebells are especially valuable at this time of the year as a magnet for bees and butterflies. I'm considering creating a small native bluebell area in a bit of wood I'm coppicing next to my little orchard and have found bulbs are widely available. Bluebells don't flower until they're at least 4 years old. So at my age, if I want a good chance of seeing a return on my investment, then seed is sadly not an option. But I can gain a bit of time and save a bit of cash by buying a mix of 4, 3 and 2-year-old bulbs from a sustainable source, those commercially produced from licensed suppliers. So our own little piece of English wood can be enjoyed.
And it's goodbye from Leicester.
And goodbye from Sarah.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
You're listening to an extended podcast of In Touch. Good evening. The many ways of adjusting to blindness. Tonight we'll look at only 3. Acquiring new skills.
As close as I can get to the work, and what I'm doing is riding the bevel of the tool.
And tough love.
You get dropped somewhere, you don't know where. They will literally bring you in a van and you might go in circles. You might be driven around the same place 5 times just to disorient you, and you will have to find your way back.
Or turning to your creative side.
I promised just 4 years ago, when blindness certified, through poetry I'd share my tale to others far and wide, so no one ever need to feel alone with losing sight, explain their thoughts to loved ones through these verses that I write.
Well, that's one of our guests tonight, Dave Steele from Manchester, performing live there. And Dave, with us in the studio, you were a performer, although not a poet, before you began to lose your sight. But just tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, that's right. So for years, before I started losing my sight, I worked as a professional singer. Started off the old route, as a lot of people used to do. I was a blue coat at Pontins, the holiday parks, back when I was 18 in the Isle of Wight. And then went on from there, touring my own cabaret, performing at all the holiday parks in the UK and abroad on cruise ships and hotels abroad for the likes of a few big sort of travel companies.
But when you lost or began to lose your sight, that's an inherited condition, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So retinitis pigmentosa, for those that don't know, is one of the most common sort of hereditary eye conditions. It's actually a group of eye conditions, because there's lots of different ways it's affected. And it comes from my mum's side, my particular gene type. So there's like a 1 in 2 chance of every time a child's born of them developing the condition.
And it's fair to say, isn't it, that times have been pretty tough for you over that period.
Yeah, the first year especially, the first sort of year to 18 months was pretty difficult. Went through a lot of the things that most people go through with vision loss, loss of independence, lost my job within the first week because it involved driving. From that, we struggled as a family to afford to pay the rent from where we were living. We ended up losing our house, fed our kids on food parcels for a little while. Things like personal independence payment, which I know a lot of people sort of struggled with. That was like a 9-month waiting list. So yeah, it was pretty tough the first year.
Is it fair to say the poetry was a bit of a turning point?
It was a massive turning point for me. Obviously, I'd worked as a singer before, and the way it came about was through social media. I'd, on the advice of my sister, who also has RP, I joined a few of the social media groups and got asked to perform an event for people with RP and Usher syndrome, which is deafblindness, in Newcastle. And the night before performing at this event, I was in bed going over songs and ideas of songs to perform. And I thought it'd be a great idea if I could take a song that everyone knew, but change the words. So I chose Stand By Me by Benny King, because I like the opening line, when the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, because that was like night blindness. So I rewrote the lyrics to that. Performed it the following day, and it had a really emotional response. Put it on YouTube and started to get messages from all over the world, and that's where the poetry started.
But you couldn't have known that it would take off the way that it has.
No. Well, it's funny actually. When I first got the idea to change the words for Stand By Me, I nudged my wife, who was in bed next to me asleep, and she sort of grumpily said, "What's the matter? What is it?" And I just sort of said to her, "Look, I've had an idea, and I think it's going to be the start of something really big," but I didn't know to what extent or what direction it was going to go in.
And we've all had those ideas and woken up in the morning and thought, "What a damn stupid idea that was."
Sometimes, but this time it's certainly it's helped me as well as helping a lot of other people as well.
Okay, stay there, Dave. We'll come back to some of this. But it's always dangerous to generalise about how differently other countries do things. But one thing we can say about the United States is the very hands-on approach of its blind-run organisations, such as the NFB, or National Federation of the Blind. Now, they run a number of residential courses teaching life skills with a strong emphasis on self-sufficiency. And what caught our attention on social media, funnily enough again, was a reference to the culmination of a 9-month-long course in its Colorado centre with something called The Drop. Well, Danielle Montour's our second guest, joining us oddly from Manchester, but it's Manchester, New Hampshire. Danielle, you've recently experienced The Drop. Just describe it for us.
It honestly is a little bit, it's just as ominous as it sounds. So you go into the program and you sort of are built up with weeks and weeks and months of travel training. So you learn a whole bunch of things to build up to this. But what eventually happens is you get dropped in the Denver metro area somewhere. You don't know where. They will literally bring you in a van, and you might go in circles. You might be driven around the same place 5 times just to disorient you. But you will be disoriented, and you will be dropped with nothing but your cane and a flip phone, and you will have to find your way back by only asking one question to get back to the centre.
So they are deliberately disorientating you, like taking a blind person and spinning them round, basically.
Literally, they will. I've had a few friends of mine who I've spoken to who said they literally drove in circles. Like they want you to not know where you are. That's the whole point.
So what happened to you? What was your version of the drop?
So I was dropped in the middle of a park in Denver. And there's a moment on these drops, because there's a support drop too where you go with an instructor. So I kind of was familiar with this moment, but it happened again when I got out of the car this time. And you just kind of stand there and you're hit with the fact that you don't know where you are, and you start to take stuff in. So in those first few moments, all I hear is a car kind of easing by on one side of me. a bike kind of going by on another. I hear a bird chirping off somewhere. I'm going, okay, there's no cars here. This is not a street. I'm not in any place that...
I mean, that's what I meant. But parks are difficult places to get out of because you haven't got walls, you haven't got sides, you don't know where the gates are. How did you get out of the park?
So you just kind of have to... There comes a point where you kind of just have to pick a direction and go, okay, I hope I'm going the right way, because, there were no streets, there was no traffic, there was nothing to lead me out, really. But I heard someone walking with a stroller in the park, so I decided that I would follow where they were going to see if I could, because if they were going there, maybe I would want to go there.
But there
if one person's going, so
there are stringent rules about what you're allowed to do and what you're allowed to ask.
So you're only allowed to ask one question ever during the whole route. That's all you're allowed to ask. You're given a flip phone and you give your phone to the people at the center so that you can't call an Uber, you can't use GPS, you can't look at the nearest bus stop, you can't do any of that. You literally just have a flip phone for emergencies, and that is it.
I'm reasonably confident now, but that would be terrifying. You're what, 22, are you, I guess?
Yeah, I just turned. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It must have been fairly scary.
It was very, very scary. Even when I was doing it, to be honest, it was one of those things. There are some other things that you do at the center that are pretty big, like cooking a meal for 60 people. You go on a drop with an instructor, a travel instructor. You make something in the wood shop. You do big braille and tech projects. That was all reasonably hard, but I literally thought this was going to be impossible.
Right. Now, unlike Dave, you've been totally blind from childhood. Why did you go on this course?
So I just didn't have all of the skills. I didn't know a lot of blind people growing up. I really had not met many of them at all until I was in late elementary school. And my parents were not really educated on blindness. I wasn't educated really on what blind people could do. They were terrified of having me cook, for example, because they didn't know how to teach a blind person how to cook. And I didn't know any blind people who cooked, so I couldn't tell them differently.
And what were your thoughts when you heard you would have to do this? The drop.
This was like one of the infamous things. Like literally the drop is just it sounds that infamous there and outside of it. It's pretty terrifying. I was one of those people who was kind of like, how can you expect anybody to travel without their phones? How is that even safe? How would you send out somebody without their phone and alone and, this and that? So it was a mix of indignation and honestly just kind of terror at the prospect of having to do it.
And I think you had what you described to me as travel anxiety anyway.
I did, yeah. And it's gotten much better since then. That drop kind of cured me of some of that. And you know what they say, if it doesn't kill you, it'll cure you. So it's one of those things where I experienced assault on other instances of traveling as a young woman by myself. So it was definitely something of a scare for me to be willing to get lost and allow myself to be lost and find my way back on my own.
And you mentioned that it's helped with the travel anxiety. What other differences has it made to you?
So I'm kind of one of those people who really, the way for me to get over things is to go through them. And so I really it was kind of a way of me facing it head on and kind of acknowledging that this is a problem that I've been struggling with and that this is the way to really get through it and conquer it and conquer part of myself too, which is kind of cool.
Let me come back to Dave Steele, who's sitting here listening to that. I don't think we've got an equivalent of that. I've never heard about it. How did you actually learn life skills as a partially sighted person?
I'm forever constantly learning. I totally relate to what Daniel was saying there. I really love the psychology behind the course. It's one of those things that if you jump in and do the big things, then the little things don't seem as bad, and the more you can sort of, put yourself out there and do stuff, the more you sort of learn.
But what formal training have you had?
Well, formal training would be when I got my guide dog, for example. I did a residential course. I did cane training before that with guide dogs.
How long was your residential course?
So the residential course I did was 11 days.
Which is not... This course is 9 months.
Yeah.
Danielle does. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, how does what Danielle did, how does it strike you? Does it appeal to you?
Absolutely. I'm forever sort of doing that. I'm one of these people through sort of my past experience of, working in the entertainment business and doing the things that I've done. I don't get nervous very often. And I think it's because I've sort of been, I've challenged myself quite a few times in my life that, nothing tends to faze me as much.
Would you have contemplated a residential course? I mean, somewhere like, for example, the Royal National College at Hereford, which does indeed, offer living skills training. I wonder if you would have, done it, because you're a family man as well.
Yes.
Or indeed, were you ever offered it?
No, I certainly wasn't offered it. And once again, it depends on sort of how long you'd be away from the family for. I think that, you touched on that would be the hardest part. I've got a wife and 4 children. So even the 11 days was really hard. So I can't imagine sort of doing, that amount of time.
Let me just ask Danielle quickly, how could you take sort of 7-8 months, I think you did, out of your life, as it were?
So I'm very lucky in that I had just, I'd done a year of college, but I don't have a family, I don't have like a partner and children to hold me in a particular place. So I was very lucky in that I could kind of literally put the pause button on where I was in my life and go do this, because it was something of a betterment for me. But I've, relating to the family thing, I've seen people there who really struggled because they were away from their partner or their children, and it was definitely for their betterment. But they went home and they visited because, that's part of who they are. So
I suppose, Dave, what I would really get, how well prepared do you think you were for what's happened to you?
I don't think I was, to be honest. Like a lot of people with retinitis pigmentosa, because it's such a gradual loss over a long period of time, I was in denial for years. I had the early onset of RP when I was probably in my early 20s, of struggling from light to dark places. That feeling when a normal sighted person will walk from the outside sunshine into maybe like a cinema and it takes a couple of seconds for your eyes to adjust. Yes. I wasn't adjusting, but I just sort of put it to the back of my mind and got on with things.
Sort of thought it would never happen, even though you knew it might.
Well, with RP, it's still classed as a rare disease, but there's 1 in 4,000 people that are affected by it. So it's not actually that rare. But when I first heard about it, which was when my sister was first diagnosed, we heard about it from my mum's side in the early 80s, there wasn't a lot of information. And I was always told I wouldn't be affected by it really until I was an old man. So I just put it to the back of my mind. It wasn't until, 5 years ago when I went for a routine eye test that I was told, oh, no, it's really here now.
So we've had the creative approach, the tough love approach, and Chris Fisher's found a third way, using going back to what you knew when you could see. Chris was always someone of a practical turn of mind, so when he lost his sight, he began to think of things he could still do with his hands. Result, Chris Fisher is now a commercially viable wood turner. Our reporter Tom Walker has been to talk to him and find out how he does his new job.
When I was sighted, I was very, very active, very gung-ho. I had a huge passion for motorcycling, and I owned many high-performance Japanese motorcycles and a couple of Ducatis. I was a student pilot, so I was working towards my PPL before I went blind. I love working with my hands, and I was in the automotive industry and did vehicle restoration, and the last place I worked was for BMW. I had a young son at the time, so obviously that took up a huge amount of time. So yeah, I was just really a normal run-of-the-mill guy that liked to be active and, work hard and play hard.
And in October 2008, you lost your sight, or at least the process of losing your sight began?
Yes, I woke up one morning, Tom, with really blurred vision and didn't know what was causing it. Was hoping that it'd clear up after an hour or two. It didn't. So the following day I got an appointment at the optometrist and my eyes were non-responsive. But he managed to have a look at the back and they were swollen up, so I had an emergency referral to Manchester Eye Hospital. At first he thought it could have been early onset of macular degeneration and a couple of other conditions, but it transpired that it was toxoplasmosis that caused irreversible damage to my retinas.
And within 4 weeks, you were totally blind?
Yeah, within 4 weeks. And the hospital said there's nothing we can do and we'll let the sensory teams and relevant social services aware of your condition. So then the machinery took over. OK, Tom, so I've pulled down the face shield there now, and that's going to provide lots of protection. I'm just positioning the tool rest now as close as I can get to the work. And what I'm doing is riding the bevel of the tool. It's not cutting yet, so as I lift the handle up, the sound changes. And we're taking cuts now, nice and gentle. The day that I was diagnosed, I don't mind, I was crying because, you lose so much instantly. The thought that I'd never be able to ride a motorcycle again or, get my pilot's licence was hard to take. And the fact that, I couldn't see my wife and son and you can't even see nature and beautiful things anymore. It's really hard, everything that the sighted community take for granted. We have to work very hard to try and get our independence back. So, yeah, it was a struggle, but I'm glad I've persevered and got to where I am. So that has put in, just that little noise there was me pushing the tool in gently, and it's left a score line. So that is now a point of reference for the handle. So I can do another one. The reason I got into wood turning is I'm a huge horror film fan, and I wanted a nice vampire stake as a piece of horror art. I didn't just want to get a sharp knife and whittle a piece of wood. I wanted something a bit more Hollywood, something a bit more stylised. So I listened to YouTube for 600 hours, which equates to 5 or 6 hours a day for 6 months, something daft like that. Assimilated as much information as I could about tools and techniques, health and safety, finishing. Purchased a lathe, got some tools, got some wood, and taught myself. So I'm just going to operate my talking tape measure.
Inches, feet, inches, 1/16 of an inch, 0.
So I've just set that now and zeroed it on inches.
11 3/4 inches.
So it's 11 3/4 inches, so that should fit on the lathe nicely, that, Tom.
What adaptations have you made to make this safer and accessible?
Well, I rely heavily on smart technology and employ phones and talking tape measures, and one of my lathes has got a foot switch. Everything in the workshop has a place, so I've built the workshop for me, by me, so really you have to consider being blind in everything you do. Nicola, I've been making this wand for a customer and I'm pretty happy with how it is now, so if you can just let me know what you think.
It's a nice piece of wood, it's got really good grain. I've just maybe make it a little bit more gnarly, add a tiny bit more detail, but yeah, it's good to go.
Okay, right, I'll do that. Nicola, my wife, quality controls every piece that I do, especially commissions. Nothing leaves the workshop or is sent for dispatch unless Nicola has said that looks stunning. In a way, I already know that I've achieved what I wanted to achieve by touch and sticking to the process. With the blind, we rely heavily on routine and processes, and that's so true in the work that I do.
Does having to ask your wife to quality control the work that you do, is that annoying in some ways because you are kind of losing control of the process?
No, I don't find that it's annoying at all. I take it as a necessary part of the process, and it's great to have someone there that you can trust that will say, and be honest, like Nicola said before, just tweak that a little bit. And everyone likes a bit of constructive criticism, and ultimately we need to have a great reputation as professionals that we can build upon.
To what extent do you think customers come to you because they're kind of quite interested in the fact that you're a blind wood turner?
I think that has a part to play. I don't want too many customers really just taking a pity purchase, if we can say that. I think my work now speaks for itself, but I don't want sympathy or pity. I'd rather people say, that is an amazing piece of work, could you make me one? But my work, it's got to a point now where it sells itself. So that was a quick sanding with 120 grit, and then I would progress to 180, which is getting finer, and then 240, and then the next, what we need to be doing is sealing the work and polishing.
What has being a wood turner done for you psychologically, spiritually, in your life?
It's given me such a great sense of achievement. It's made me part of a worldwide community of other wood turners and makers from all over the world. I've got this huge extended family. It's given me a source of income. It's given me numerous challenges. It's given me so much that I wouldn't be who I am now without being a wood turner, and I can't ever really envisage my life without being a maker and a wood turner.
And has it helped you to cope with the loss of your sight?
Yeah, it is great therapy, because when you're in your workshop and you're concentrating on a piece of work, you truly are in the zone. Nothing else matters. You're not worrying about paying any bills or, picking friends and family up from here, there and everywhere. You're in the moment, you're being creative, you're expressing yourself. I'm in here with the radio on and a cup of tea. I've got the lathe on, and it really is a time for me to shine.
Chris Fisher talking with Tom Walker. Dave Steele, the message seems to be it's all about using what you've got. And you told us you made a very conscious decision to do this and perhaps to inspire people. Some people rather balk at the word inspirational. There are blind people who feel queasy at the idea that their role is to be inspirational. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I do. But as I've always said, the things that I talk about and the things that I write about is specific to my particular condition. People experience vision loss in many, many different ways. I think when you are faced with a sudden loss of vision, or you've been blind from birth, you have no other choice than to, like Danielle, for example, go feet in first and adjust. But when you are constantly adjusting to a slow decline of sight loss, it affects you in many different ways.
But what people say is, I really hate the idea that people are going to see me as that somehow I'm here to be inspirational.
No, well, it depends on what you're inspiring a person to do, really, isn't it? I mean, if you're inspiring someone to pick up a cane, apply for a guide dog, get themselves out there and live the life to the full, then how can that not be a good thing? And that's the thing, it depends how you're being inspirational. We all have a particular song that has gotten us through a bad time, whether it be a breakup, first love, that sort of thing. Music and poetry has this ability, a unique way of getting a message across and inspiring people to do things.
So is that your job? I mean, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for them, or doesn't it matter?
I suppose it doesn't matter. I mean, you speak to any songwriter, are they writing for the listener, or are they writing for themselves? Probably a bit of both. When I started to lose my sight, we lost a lot of things, and I lost a lot of confidence and pride, but writing the poetry and helping people through that poetry gave me my purpose back. So yeah, I feel good about helping people.
Danielle, what's your thought about this? I've been to National Federation of the Blind conferences, the ones you have in the States, and they rather go sometimes for the inspirational approach. I just wonder how you feel about this.
So inspiration is a little bit of an interesting phrase. We have a phrase here in the States. I actually don't think it's just the States, because Stella Young kind of coined it as inspiration porn,
so
absolutely.
To speak. Heard it lots of times.
So
I was too polite to use it, but there you are. You've done it now.
Oh, see, that's one of us has got it. It's okay. Tough job.
So is it? Do you understand that the element of that?
So I think what it comes down to is, they've kind of nailed it, and it depends on what you're inspiring them to do. And at least for me, it depends on what people are saying I'm inspiring them with. As part of me says, if I'm inspiring somebody by doing what I do and being who I am, that's a cool thing. But at the same time, it can have this sort of condescending connotation too. Like, oh, you're so inspiring. You're walking in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're sighted and you're doing it just fine. Why are you looking at me like I'm, like I'm learning how to toddle?
Someone from the sighted world saying that you are inspirational for doing everyday things is,
right.
Yeah, I can see that. That's the issue there, but,
Now, if a blind person comes up to me, and I've had this where blind people have been like, wow, your training sounds really great, or, I'm really, like, your story inspires me to want to go do this. That's a completely different ballgame to me, because you're going at it differently. You're not,
I think
they're genuinely encouraged to do something.
I think confronting your fears, your biggest fears and challenges is inspirational.
I agree.
In any
for
walk of
anybody.
life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you both one quick question. Danielle first. How accepting are you of your visual impairment now?
So I am pretty, it's been my life forever. Just a quick background. I was born with bilateral retinoblastoma, which is a form of eye cancer. Similar to Dave, mine is a dominant genetic thing. So I have a 50% chance of passing it to any kids I have. Mm-hmm. As of right now, oddly enough, my partner also had retinoblastoma. So we're actually at a 2/3 chance now. So it's a 67% chance to pass. Most of the time, I'm pretty good with my blindness. I've known it forever. I haven't really known anything different. But I'd be lying if there were times when I didn't wish I could see, my family or even myself. I've had a lot of body image issues due to not being able to see my own face or my own body, and not being able to see what people look like around me or body language or, So I'd be lying if I said that I was always okay with it and always happy where I was.
And Dave, you said that you'd been in a state of denial about it. How are you now?
Back and forward, a lot better than I was, and the poetry has sort of helped me to get there, and the support of other people and my family and my wife especially. But I'm at the sort of last stages of my sight now. I've got less than 5 degrees of my vision left, and it's declining very rapidly. So you are almost constantly grieving for something that you haven't lost yet, but you're also reliant on it because you've still got that little pocket of central vision. And your vision doesn't work, so it's like having to use something that's actually broken, which is the toughest part. But also going back to what Danielle was saying there, the hardest part for me, and also is the thing that inspires me the most to sort of do what I do is because of the children's side of things. There's a 1 in 2 chance that my children will develop it when they're older, and I want to show them that there's so many things you still can do despite vision loss.
Dave Steele, Danielle Montour, thank you both very much indeed. And that's it for tonight. Please call our dedicated In Touch phone line to leave your thoughts and comments. That number 0161 836 1338 1338, or email us at intouch@bbc.co.uk. So from me, Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumatat and the team, goodbye. But Dave Steele, read us out with one more piece of poetry.
So I'm going to read a poem that was written for my son, who said there's a 1 in 2 chance that he could go blind when he's older. This is called Shift This Cloud. How do I break the news of what I may have done to you? Won't know for sure, but doctors say the odds are 1 in 2. I look into your eyes and watch for signs I hope aren't there. Pray this RP will end in me, no faulty gene is shared. This tunnel world I live in, hope one day won't be your view. Don't follow in my steps or place foot inside my shoe. The battle for acceptance will be just a story told, with perfect sight, not hurt by light, clear vision break the mould. I carry heavy guilt through sleepless nights and secret tears. I wait to know the answer, ticking clock of RP's fears. But if in future blindness does come knocking at your door, I'll lead you by example, show you life is so much more. My son, be proud, we'll shift this cloud and dance in heavy rain. I'll show you all that's possible, strong heart and long white cane. With poems raise awareness, this will be my legacy. 3 books will travel round the world, my Stand By Me RP. So years from now, when you're fully grown, if blindness burden shared, just look at what your dad's achieved, so you'll be more prepared.
Here is the scaffolding news for Friday 26th of April 2019. This is a list of known footway obstructions, including scaffolding, hoarding, details of skips, cranes and cherry pickers. We're unable to include end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. In the Cowes area, current scaffolds, 93 High Street Cowes, scaffold up within hoarding, Cameos, Bath Road Cowes. Current hoardings, 93 High Street Cowes, Building materials on the highway at 60 York Street, Cowes. In the Newport area, current scaffolds, 15 Cypress Road, Newport, HMV Castlehold Lane, Newport, 10 High Street, Newport, 30 High Street, Newport, 61 High Street, Newport and in Castlehold Lane, Lloyd's Bank, St Thomas Square, Newport, 14 Caesars Road, Newport. Current hoarding, Castle Inn, High Street, Newport, current cherry picker, 16 Honey Hill, Newport.
And in the Ryde area, current scaffolds, Coburg's Nightclub, Union Street Ryde, Marvin's Cross Street Ryde, Watson Bull and Porter, 9 High Street Ryde, pending scaffolds at 77 High Street Ryde. Current skips at Carita, Stane Road, Seaview, spaces behind 90 St Edmund's Walk, Wootton, 5 Seafield Terrace, Seafield Road, Seaview, 2 Wrexham Avenue Ryde, and there are building materials and hoardings at the car park, Brooks Road, Bembridge, spaces behind 90 St Edmund's Walk, Wootton. And in the Sandown and Shanklin area, current scaffolds, Wilmar, Dorkin and Vermaper Cottages, Church Street, Newchurch, the Ocean Hotel Townhouses, High Street, Sandown, the Toymaster, 103 High Street, Sandown, that's in Albion Road, Ladies' Realm, 48 Regent Street, Shanklin, Co-op, Regent Street, Shanklin, Sandown Church Avenue Road, Sandown. Current skips at 10 and 12 Northbourne Avenue, Shanklin. Pending skips at 14 Donington Drive, Shanklin, and current hoardings at Premier Inn, 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown, and at the junction of St Boniface Road, Arthur's Hill, Shanklin.
In the Ventnor area, current scaffolds, corner of Trinity Road and Madeira Road, Ventnor, 1 Boniface Road and into Trinity Road, Ventnor. Pending cherry picker, Toad Cottage, St John's Road, Wroxall. Current skips, 16 South Street, Ventnor. Danyan Kebab Shop, 10 Pear Street, Ventnor. In the West Wight area, current scaffolds, St James's Church, St James's Street, Yarmouth. Saxonbury, St James's Street, Yarmouth. Vehicle crossings under construction, Dawson, 25A Ashley Way, Bryston, 74 Howgate Road, Bembridge, 1 to 3 Yarborough Road, Wroxall, 19 Clarence Gardens, Shanklin, The Willows, 15 Cupressus Avenue, Winford, 10 Baring Road, Cowes, 7 Alfred Road, Lake, 32 Albert Road, Shanklin, 51 Worsley Road, Gurnard, 72 Old Road, East Cowes.